Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Rouge Rugby podcast where we talk about real Canadian rugby. I'm Stu Hardy, joined by Jeff Robinson and Ed Pye. Fellas, we've had the final game of the European Tour up against Portugal, and their nickname actually translates as the Wolves, which is pretty cool, as like Os Lobos, but for those of us that don't speak Portuguese fluently, the Wolves sounds much more enticing and dramatic. Going into this entire series, we said that Canada had the opportunity for potentially 2 wins, and unfortunately that did not come to pass. It was another beating, this time at the hands of Portugal, and on paper you can say, okay, it's another loss on Meehan's record. It's another loss to this Canadian team. Is this more of the same? And we also spoke about it last week of saying that this is a growing Canadian side. Meehan was brought in to do 2 things: qualify for the World Cup and get more guys international experience. And you can say that he's successfully achieved both of those things, and going up against 3 opponents that have not only qualified for the next Rugby World Cup, but all of them featured in the previous World Cup as well. And, especially for a nation that didn't qualify for the World Cup, that is the kind of opportunities that you need to be taking and getting something from it. As we saw with the game against Georgia, victory isn't always going to be a possibility in these things, but you can definitely get and gather experience from it. I think this game was the first and only game where Canada have led for any of the games this series, which came to a screeching halt just before halftime, where the halftime score was 16-all. And then in the second half, it was just a case of Portugal able to, take home advantage and press that attack. Canada opting for the posts on a few occasions when you can argue that, maybe you should have gone for the try. Ultimately, the final score is Portugal 33, Canada 27. So if this was a Rugby World Cup game, this would be a losing bonus point to Canada, which is the best result of this tour so far. But, there's still work to do. But thankfully, there's still time to do it. Let's quickly go over the scoring for Canada. So Mason Flesch got the first try that put Canada ahead in the 28th minute. Morgan Dinardo, on his debut for the senior men's 15s, picked up a try in the 51st minute. Robbie Povey was able to get only 1 of those conversions, but he did score 4 penalties, and Peter Nelson picked up the last penalty, which was the last scoring opportunity for Canada in the second half. So I want to get into the game itself. So I'll start with you, Jeff. What did you make of this result?
Obviously disappointing. Reading the match stats, and I'll let Ed cover it in more detail, but it's a very frustrating game. I could see the scrum, which I've been complaining about for weeks, went 100%, but now the lineout went 75%. But the ones that stood out to me, because most of the match stats actually were really even or in Canada's favor, ironically. But there's a couple match stats that I really want to focus on. Like, as I said already, the line out 75, which is probably why at the 65th minute, they went for the post, not the corner, which I thought they should have gone to the corner at that point. But territory was 58-42 in Portugal's favor. So Portugal was playing in the right areas of the field. And the other one is stat that really stuck out to me was actually the post-contact meters, where I think Portugal had a pretty clear advantage there, which means they were getting extra meters after contact. And this kind of comes to something where I was thinking during the whole game and the whole tour this November is other than Owowu, Canada can't really get over the gain line with possession and
Mm.
put the teams on the back foot. And I remember thinking late first half, well, two things. Mason Flesh went off injured. I can't remember exactly when, but around the 30th minute. And I went, uh-oh. Uh, and then at the 39th minute, I'm like, Canada's had a very good first half. What happens in that minute?
Mm.
Portugal ties it. And then, as you were saying, like as they say always in rugby, you don't want to concede tries in the last 5 minutes or the of the half or first 5 minutes of the half around halftime. And that's what Canada did both. So it was a competitive game. Again, it's a great learning experience for the guys. Uh, Nadilal, I
Donato.
probably butchered his name. Yeah, he didn't look that bad on the wing, especially for a young guy. Oh, this is something else when I checked match stats for the game, which I actually find encouraging. And I could see if you guys could actually answer these questions. What was the average age to the forwards for Canada in this game?
I think it was.
Not me.
It was
I don't know for certain, but I think it is around like the 25, 26.
23.
20, goodness.
Yeah, and
Well,
the average
well,
age of the backs was 25.
huh.
Now, obviously, that winger will would have really brought that down, but still, that those are actually also encouraging
Hmm.
things. I mean, those are encouraging numbers for
Yeah.
Canada. So right now, I'm focusing all my comments just to the game,
Hmm.
and not to the tour as a whole right now, which I hope we get to in a few minutes.
Yeah, we will.
As I thought.
But we're going to pass it over to Ed, our statistician. Uh, are there any stats that we've? I know that Jeff brought up a number of stats there. Were there any stats from this game that really stood out to you?
Well, I'll let Jeff stay on the stats there because I had a look at the stats and there wasn't anything from a individual perspective that really stood out. I mean, Owaru continues to be Canada's best player.
Hmm.
Number of meters, number of carries, number of tackles, turnovers. The guy does it all. So he is definitely Canada's best player right now. Rumble is doing a good job complementing him. Donato had a pretty good debut. He looks pretty solid. So he had a good match. But I mean, getting away from those stats, as Jeff said, it was pretty even right across the board. I'm actually pretty upbeat about Canada's performance here. When we think about Portugal, Portugal was probably the best, or at least one of the best teams from the lower tiers in the last World Cup. If you look at their games, the complexity that they played with in their backline, their attacking structures were very much first class. They uh, rivaled or at least equaled some of the attacking structures that we saw from tier one teams. So, in terms of their coaching and the strategies that they're employing, and we saw it in this game. Their attacking structures are really complex. The way that they set up their plays, the amount of behind balls and unders lines that they run in their back line is really really good. So they've actually got a really good attacking structure. The other thing to mention is that 16 players in their squad play in the French pro leagues.
Hmm.
So either in the first division there or in their second division, which probably the French second division is at least the equal of Major League Rugby, probably better
Oh,
in some cases
better,
than Major
better.
League Rugby. So you've got at least half of their squad playing in fully professional competitions where they're getting this highly professional training environment week in week out. When you compare that to, as Jeff mentioned, a very young Canadian team, for Canada to stay in the game and keep it to the score that they kept it to, I actually think that's a really good result for Canada. To be up, and Jeff was talking about having some power runners. If we go back 20 episodes, I was talking about Mason Flesh as one of Canada's big ball runners. He showed that with his first try. The ability to execute that line out to the back of the line out, and then for him to come around on that line and power over the line, that's something good that we can build on in the future. He just needs to up his consistency with that and continue that power running. So, I think there's players in there in terms of that youth profile that we mentioned, that can fill in these roles. They need more players to step up. Someone like a Donato, I think, could be really good in the future. Couple of the things from the game that I picked up on. The ruck protection for Canada was not as good as it could have been. Gallagher had one of the top carries for the games, but that was because he was having to pull the ball out of the ruck when Portugal were counter rucking, and he was getting caught behind the ruck with the ball in possession. So I think they were counting that as part of his carry count. So that ruck protection was also the thing that led to Portugal's try just after halftime that put them into the lead. And that shouldn't have been a try to Portugal. That, like, Canada had the ball secured, they turned it over, they were ready to exit, and they just didn't get enough bodies into the ruck to protect that ball. Portugal were able to counter ruck, ball pops out, and they score and go ahead. And that was, I think, a really defining moment in the match for Canada. So if they keep that ruck protected there, the game might be a different story, maybe a different outcome that we see. So, I think Canada was in this. I think they had a chance to win it. And I guess I'll keep my opinions about the tour as a whole until we start talking about that. But I think this was actually, compared to where Portugal are right now in world rugby and where Canada are right now, I think it was a pretty good result.
Yeah, I think that insight into how Portugal have been since they qualified for the 23 World Cup and they've been on the world stage, and that's obviously attracted the attention of a few of the Pro Ditter clubs. So absolutely, we're all fans of rugby. Credit where credit's due. They've been the ones to get that opportunity, and congratulations to them. But yeah, when you consider in mind that Canada are now 25th in the world, you're going to be in a 24 team World Cup. You're going to be facing opposition that's going to be stronger than you, as has been proven for this entire year. But to focus on the tour itself, and because there's always going to be questions like, what does Canada men's senior 15s team need to work on that we've identified from this tour? From the Romania game, you can say discipline. 4 penalties that Canada conceded in that game, and if those penalties hadn't happened, Canada would have won that game. That's a fair assessment. From the Georgia game, I'd say their conditioning. Now, this is something that has been and will continue to be a problem, I imagine, for a few numbers of years, and that's just because, we all know that Rugby Canada doesn't have the funds available to have a professional competition in Canada that they fully own, and so it is at the discretion of the players themselves. If they're in MLR teams, fantastic. They have those opportunities with their MLR clubs. But for a lot of these guys, they are still essentially part-time players. They are doing international duty, whether that's 15s or 7s. They are doing MLR stuff. But then they're going back to their other job. The one that really pays the bills and allows them to then go and travel for Canada, whether that's within Canada or across the world. And hopefully with the introduction of these high performance centers across Canada, hopefully within the next year or two, we'll have more players being able to utilize those facilities, utilizing the staff that's available at those facilities, and improving their conditioning as a whole. Because, when you're, again, the 25th ranked team in a 24 team competition, things such as conditioning are going to be exposed on the world stage very, very quickly. And from the Romania game, I'd say, as we alluded to, sometimes you're going for the posts when maybe you should be going for the line out from 5 meters out. And, as you mentioned, Jeff, the line out percentage was only 75% for this game. But you still got to give it a try. This is the time when you try and fail. You're allowed to fail because, Canada couldn't. There was no opportunity for Canada at all to improve their band ranking for the draw for the next Men's Rugby World Cup. They're in band 4. That's how it's going to be. So you may as well just aim for the corner. If the line out's good, fantastic. You get minimum 5 points from the driving maul or from passing it out. And if it doesn't work, well, you take that information, you learn next time, and try something different at the line out. And I can understand that, obviously, going for the boot and getting it between the sticks obviously means that you get something on the board. But you got to risk it for that little bit more. You got to risk it to maybe even get like 7 points. And as we see here, this game was lost by 6. If you add 2 try opportunities, that's a few more points on the board. If you get those in conversion, that's an 8-point swing in Canada's favour. So those are the things. Those are the 3 things they need to work on, in my opinion. Their discipline, which admittedly over the tour they got a lot better. It was only Portugal that got a yellow card in this game. No yellow cards for Canada. Conditioning and game opportunities. I think those are the 3 things that they need to work on, and they'll have opportunities next year. But before we get into that, I'll throw it back to you guys. Ed, what did you make of this tour as a whole?
Yeah, actually, I mean, it's obviously disappointing to lose all the games, but looking back at it, and this kind of falls into the same categories I mentioned with Portugal as a whole, right? They're a good squad. They played well at the last World Cup, or gave a good account of themselves while still losing, but showed that they have structures and systems and the strategies within their setup to become better. Georgia are a team that consistently knock on the Six Nations door. They'll probably not be let into the Six Nations, but they're consistently talking about we deserve to be there. Whether they're better than Wales right now is a big question. And Romania is probably a good gauge for Canada and just in general. So to come away from the tour with close losses, I actually think is a pretty good result. I'm a little bit on the other end of the argument when you're talking about going for tries versus penalties. I think you should always, in terms of strategy, practice your strategy that is a winning strategy rather than maybe trying to bed in an attacking structure. So for Canada, wins are going to be important. So if you've got opportunities to go for points, then maybe you want to practice or at least have these games where you've got this ability to build winning concepts in your head. And if that's choosing 3 points over a try at a certain point, I don't think that's so bad to take those points on offer rather than just try and experiment with an attack. When you're playing these games and they're close games and you're in the match, maybe it is better to go for the points and practice, actually trying to get to within a score of the game. My big work on for Canada would be set piece consistency. So we saw, as Jeff mentioned with the stats, 1 week we're 100% lineouts, then we're down to 75. Scrums are good 1 week, and it's down to 75. So maintaining that set piece consistency above 80, 85% for all of our matches has to be a big work on. That also means we need to build depth in those areas. When Kelly Martinez dropped out of the tour, that significantly depowered our scrums. So, having that depth there and to support the top line players so that we don't get those wild fluctuations, I think is the big work on.
And Jeff, what are your thoughts on this tour?
Uh, Going back to that penalty, I'm kind of in the middle with you guys because I think one reason why they went for the posts at that point with the 65th minute when they just got the yellow card was one, I guess, get 3 points on because they still had 15 minutes left in the game. Two, Mason Flesh was already off. The lineup wasn't going as well. So maybe they were a bit worried they weren't going to win the ball. So they thought maybe try to go for the points, even though I think it was not an easy kick. It was still pretty close to the halfway on an angle. I still think they should have gone to the line out there, but I can understand why they went for the post. My big things was, well, Romania, I guess, like you said, penalties. Georgia, well, set piece as a whole, and also conditioning. And for Portugal, I would say game management. But I'd also going back to that decision. But I'd also go back to something Ed said earlier about rucks, because I think ruck defense for Canada, like securing ball, probably costs Canada 3 games this year: Belgium, Spain, and Portugal. So I definitely think that's something like the fundamentals, I guess I would say, is in rugby is that something Canada's got to keep working on. And I also think something else, as I alluded to earlier, other than Ororu and maybe Flesh, Canada doesn't really have any players that can regularly get over the gain line and get them front football, especially they don't have any in the backs. They got to find someone that can go at 12 or 13 that can get them that go forward ball and can force defenses to have to back up. I think that's something they got to work on, either finding a player or developing a player that's already in the system. That's that's something I do think they need to work on for next year too.
Yeah, I think those are great points from both of you. But and to finish, I think the general consensus from the Canadian rugby community has been, whilst yes, this is 3 losses, this tour has been very positive. That the players are sticking into the games to the end. They're doing as best they can. But there definitely seems to be a fire in these players that maybe wasn't present under the previous coaching regime. So we are at the end of the
I was gonna
international.
say you're right that they didn't embarrass themselves. They
Yeah,
did not.
yeah,
That's for certain.
yeah, absolutely. Um, anyway, so we are at the end of the international season for 2025, but we already have news of international games in 2026. There has been a press release, I should say, which is the provisional fixtures for the 2026 Nations Cup. So it is saying that the plan is essentially that the Europe, Asia, and Africa pool will visit the Americas in July, and then the Americas teams will play in Europe and one game in Hong Kong um, in November. So for Canada, in July, they are set to host Spain on July the 4th, Portugal on July the 11th, and Zimbabwe on July 18th. And the away fixtures in November, they will be playing Georgia on November 7th. Hong Kong, China, they will play that game in Europe on November the 14th. And they will conclude with Romania on November 21st. So, other things pointed out in this press release is that Samoa will be playing their Americas games in South America. Tonga will be playing their games in North America. And those 3 teams that Canada are playing in July, they'll basically also rotate with the USA and Tonga. And basically Chile and Uruguay will, with Samoa, they will have those rotating teams, and then they'll play the other 3 Europe teams in Europe in November. So, Jeff, what do you make of these fixtures for next year so far?
Well, it's great to have 6 confirmed games so far. I would say 2 should be considered very winnable,
Mm-hmm.
with another 2 to 3 possible winnable. So uh, I'm excited for that. I hope that they have great turnouts for the games that they're hosting, and Canada can let the fans go home happy with after all those games. But it'll be very interesting to see what Canada's squad will be.
Yeah.
I mean, especially after this winter, it's
Mm.
going to be. I'll be very curious to see the squad. So, yeah.
Ed, what do you make of these tour dates? And do you,
Yeah, I think. Oh,
yeah, I was going to say, what games do you see that Canada have the potential to get a wins out of?
I think the goal here should be 3 from 3. Um, I think they'd be happy with 1 from 3, but I think home advantage is such a huge advantage for any team. So I would be targeting 3 out of 3 here. We know we've pushed Spain and Portugal close. Zimbabwe might be a bit of an unknown quantity, but I think they should definitely be looking to turn some of these results around based on the performances that they've put in the losses. The away games are obviously going to be a bit more tricky, but for home, I think the goal should be 100% success.
All right, and we'll have more information of the Nations Cup 2026 as it comes out. We'll be sure to relate it to you both on the podcast and across our social media channels. Now, there was a brief scrimmage. The winning team will call it a game. The losing team will call it a scrimmage between the Chicago Hounds Academy and the Pacific Pride, and this was out in BC. The halftime score was 26-14 to the Hounds. The full-time score, Hounds 57, Pride 33. So that's a pretty big shipment of points there by the Pride. But obviously the Hounds Academy, different caliber of players. And this game was available on YouTube. No comms, unfortunately. But you can watch the game and you can determine whether it was a scrimmage or an actual match. Jeff, you were able to get a look at this game. What did you make of it?
As the BC Rugby News wrote, it was very much a Baba's game. It was very much. A lot of turnovers at rucks on both sides, open play, a lot of running, missed tackles. It was a bit of a hard game to keep an eye on and follow because it just kept going like, whoa, it's like back and forth.
I think the good thing to mention here is that MLR teams are playing fixtures, and there's been a number of players being confirmed as part of these squads here to display that MLR is going ahead in 2026. So I think that's the big takeaway for me.
Yeah.
So bringing it back to North America now, because Rugby Americas North hosted the annual Round Sevens. The purpose of this is to determine which team will qualify for the Sevens Division 3, and then whoever wins that gets to be put into the Challenger Series. So Canada were up against a number of teams from North America. The USA were not involved. They were already part of the Challenger Series. So Canada just need to do the simple task of keep winning, win the gold game, and they will be promoted into the Division 3 game. And they did incredibly well. On Friday, they played Barbados and Bermuda. They beat Barbados 45-0 and beat Bermuda 34-0. And then on the Saturday, well, everything just fell apart because Canada played Mexico. And Canada scored 35 points, but Mexico scored 7. So it's basically the end times now, isn't it? And while Canada did qualify for the quarterfinals again, their defense failed them. Yes, they may have scored 40 points, but Cayman Islands scored 7. And I don't know, guys, it's just so heartbreaking. Over 2 tournaments now, the Round Sevens of 2024 and 2025, Canada have now conceded a total of 14 points. It's, and I mean, what are we even doing here anymore? But despite those defensive mishaps, they were able to pull it around. The semi-final against Trinidad and Tobago, Canada were able to score 40, and Trinidad and Tobago scored 0. And then finally, in the gold medal final, Canada scored 31, Barbados 0. So Canada win the consecutive golds at the round sevens, and they qualify for the Sevens Division 3. We will have more information on that when that is occurring, but the main focus now is to the Sevens Division 1, as it was previously known, the World Series, because we have the women's team taking part in that this weekend and next weekend. We begin with the Dubai Sevens, and we'll follow it up with the Cape Town Sevens. The announcement came that Carissa Norston has been selected as captain for these rounds of the Sevens. The only player to have competed in the Women's Rugby World Cup and in these Sevens games will be Asia Hogan Rochester. The reason why is because the other teams are currently... The reason why the other players are not available is that they are currently with their PWR teams in England and therefore cannot get out of it. The PWR season will continue through until the end of March, I believe, just in time for the Women's Six Nations for the European teams, but also the Pacific 4 series will begin approximately the same time. So, unfortunately, this is the deal that has to be made, that we have a number of players missing. But considering this is also Canada, who came third in the World Series last year, I don't think we've got anything to be worried about. The first game of the Dubai Sevens will be against Great Britain. And yeah, I think this is going to be... and it's going to be interesting, to say the least, because this is going to be the new 8-team format for Sevens. Instead of going over 3 days, it's only going to be the Saturday and Sunday. So I guess the final question I have is, how do you think Canada women are going to be doing this Seven series? Ed, I'll throw it to you first. We've, they've had coaching change last year with Jack and Ratty leaving following the Olympics, and this will be the second year of their new coaching structure. Able to continue from where they left off with Jack, with having making it to bronze in the championship final. Do you think they can run it back? I mean, Australia and New Zealand have been very competitive last season, or do you think that Canada will be able to crack into the top 2 in the world?
I think Australia is probably the best positioned at the moment. New Zealand have a number of players that will be playing in different competitions around the world in 15s. But I mean, when we look at Canada, there's a number of players in there that are going to be well performed. It'll be interesting to see how Buisa goes on this stage. I think that's a good way to get her more exposure to an attacking game that she can maybe transfer over to 15s. You've obviously got Scurfield there as well, and Charity Williams as well, but also good to see a Pai in the team, Adia Pai. And actually, I also know that there were going to be a couple of other UBC players in that team, if not for injury. So maybe they'll come back later on.
I mean, it's always good to see Charity Williams playing Sevens, whether that's, whether it's round Sevens, whether it's the World Series, whether it's the Olympics. More Charity Williams is fine by me. Jeff, what are your thoughts of this reduced format tournament instead of going from 12 teams to 8 teams? Do you think that'll help reignite the spark of Sevens rugby outside the Olympics?
No.
No. Well, there you have it, folks. Direct and to the point.
I liked, to be honest, I'm old-fashioned. I liked that 16-team tournament that was over 2 days. I thought that was a great atmosphere, and doesn't matter men's or women's. I think that would have been great if they could have stuck with that. I understand for financial reasons why they did not, but To me, sevens has just been going backwards. So, yeah. But anyway, good luck to the Canadian players.
Yes, I think we can all get behind the Canadian women and hoping that they can, get a few gold medals this season. Obviously, the Sevens will be returning to Vancouver in 2026, and even though the men's team are not in the championship level series, they will be competing. That has already been confirmed by Rugby Canada. In Vancouver, this year they did a 4-team tournament. Maybe we can have that again this year and to see which teams get to be invited along. Maybe we can, maybe we'll invite Barbados and Mexico and the teams we allowed 7 points through, and maybe we can revert it back to the 0 that we are so used to over the past year. But yeah, it's the start of the 7 series. Only 2 rounds for 2025. The rest will be played in 2026. But you can watch each and all of those games now on TSN Plus as part of Rugby Canada's Home of Rugby on TSN. And if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out more, as well as our written pieces, on our website, therougerugby.ca. You can also find us on Spotify and YouTube at The Rouge Rugby. We're also available across social media, including Facebook, X, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, and Blue Sky, all at The Rouge Rugby. Jeff, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on X at WPRugbyJeff.
And Ed, where can people find you on social media?
Facebook and YouTube, rugby101_25.
And you can find me across social media at Hardman, H4RDMAN. Well, that's where we're going to end this episode. Jeff, Ed, thank you for joining me, and thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Rouge Rugby Podcast, where we talk about real Canadian rugby. We hope you